Hello everybody. As you can probably tell from the backdrop, we are back in Bali where you first met me all of those months ago at the start of the year. The journey back was full of surprises in terms of bad surprises, cancelled flights, delayed luggage, and so it has taken me a few days to get over the jet lag, the stress of it all, and so this September wrap-up is coming to you a few days more delayed than I would have liked, kind of like my baggage. So this is the members only second video for September. In October you will get my October wrap-up and also another video that I'm planning, which actually is one that I'm really excited for. This is me giving you guys some personalised book recommendations. So whether you have a friend or family member in mind that has a birthday or Christmas coming up that you'd quite like some help with in terms of picking a book for them, or you would like a recommendation yourself, send me in your very specific book recommendation requests and I will make a video in October for you all. September was a good reading month for me. I read a lot. I didn't read a lot in terms of number of books, but I read a lot in terms of page count. And that is because my month was very much a tale of two halves. So the first 2 weeks in September, I read two very enjoyable, very chunky books. They were both at something around the mark of 600 to 650 pages, and they were wonderful, and I had a thoroughly great time with both of them. And then the second half of September was a half of DNFs for me. I didn't actually complete a book, but I read many. I think I got through a significant chunk of about 5 books before putting them down. That was also the time that I was travelling. I was going through, as you saw in the travel vlog, I was going through Portugal and Milan on my way back to Bali. So I'm not sure if the disruption life-wise played into any of those DNFs or not. I think I may have DNF'd the books anyway, just because I wasn't getting on with them for various reasons that I'll discuss. But overall, my average star rating for September came out at 4.5 stars for the 3 full books that I read. And my other quick stats for September are that 0% were translated, 0% were by male authors, and 33% were by new-to-me authors. So the 3 books that I finished and completed in the first half of September were So Late in the Day, Claire Keegan's new short story, Alison Weir's Catherine Parr, The Sixth Wife, and also Tana French's The Likeness. The Likeness was my top-rated book at 5 stars. I absolutely was totally surprised by this one. This is the second in the Dublin Murder Squad series. Tana French is known for being a thriller writer, I would say, a crime writer, and whilst her first novel in this series I gave, I think, 3.5 stars. I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was solid. This one just had a different emotional layer for me. That was because I was reading this for a video that's coming out on books that are dark academia. And so I went in, maybe unfairly, judging it against The Secret History, the dark academia book, and it did not disappoint. This was very close quarters. It was in the minds of 5 college students, one of whom dies at the beginning of the novel, but the other teenagers in the group don't know this. So the police bring in an undercover officer who is the doppelganger for the girl that died, which I know doesn't exist, and so you have to suspend some belief in this. But what ends up happening is that this detective goes inside the house as this young woman and pretends to her friends that her injuries, hospitalised her but didn't kill her, when really, actually, the injuries that they gave her did kill her. And they're trying to solve the murder from the inside. So it was gripping. The characterisation was so wonderful. I felt I really connected to not only the detectives, but also the students in the house. And actually, I think I connected to the students in the house more. They were such a tight-knit group. They were so incestuous and insular, but they really cared for each other, and they were devastated that their friend had somehow died. And the circumstances around how exactly she died are not revealed to us until maybe the last 5% of the book. But throughout the rest of the 95%, I was totally engaged and enthralled by these characters. It has been the only thing so far in my reading that has even compared to The Secret History and has even measured closely to it. So that is a feat and a triumph in itself. It is slightly heavier on exposition than I would usually go for, but that is because it is a thriller. It is not necessarily trying to be in the same genre as The Secret History. It's coming at The Secret History from a purely thriller angle, crime novel angle. So I think that is why it's justified in its stylistic choice there, that it is heavier on the dialogue. But I mean, an engaging and pacey thriller that kind of zooms towards a climax. What more could you need? So that takes me on to Catherine Parr by Alison Weir. This I gave 4.5 stars. I thoroughly loved this book. I thought it was such an insight into a woman that I knew relatively little about, and by the end of it I felt like I really knew her and loved her and could empathise with her a lot. She went through, I think, 4 husbands in the end, Henry being her 3rd husband. So her first husband was a very young homosexual, and that marriage fell apart, as you can quite imagine, for various issues to do with his mental health around being a homosexual married to a young woman and the demands of that. And then her second husband was an older man by about 20 years, and she was still, I think 19, 20 years old. And she had a great time with him. They had a thoroughly lovely life together. He already had 2 children, I think, so there was less pressure on her to produce a child, which obviously was her main function and role in society at that time. He died of old age, I guess, in that time. 45 was old age. So he died of illnesses related to being old, which then left Catherine free to marry again, and so she married Henry VIII. But she was being courted at the time by Henry and a guy called Tom Seymour. So in the end, both men proposed to her, and obviously she couldn't refuse the king, so the king's request had to be accepted. And so Tom Seymour, unfortunately, was sort of pushed to the wayside, but got his redemption in the end. And actually, Tom Seymour ended up being the character that I didn't like. He was the character that I liked the least. So I'm kind of glad that she had a very happy marriage with Henry before what transpired with Tom happened in the final kind of 25% of the novel. So it was a really nice look at Henry VIII too, because he's such a tyrant in many ways. To know that he actually loved and defended Catherine when it came to, life and death, people wanting to kill her. And we're talking about the politicians, the men in court trying to kill her because of her religious views and because she was such a strong force to be reckoned with. They saw her as a threat, not only to the current king, but also when the current king inevitably died, she had a very strong relationship and power over Henry's son Edward, who we all know actually died himself and so became irrelevant in that sense. But at the time they were thinking, wow, this is a woman who not only can manipulate the king but can manipulate the future king. And so she very much had a target on her back, and Henry defended her out of love and loyalty for her, and they had a very successful marriage. They didn't produce any children together. And so you start thinking at this point of the book, right, is Catherine Parr never going to produce a child? Is she just one of those women who can't do that sort of thing? And so, because at the time obviously no one would know, it was 100% the woman's fault, but after 3-4 marriages with men who have produced children, the implication would be that it's it's her rather than them sort of thing. So I'm not quite sure if this next is a spoiler, so I won't say it, but about the whole children thing. But maybe if you are familiar with the life of Catherine Parr, you already know. But just that I'm very happy with how her life ended, and how the book ended, and how it just felt so complete and so pure almost. What a perfect, in its way, life. You know, she had her small and significant problems, but she really did have a wonderful life, I would say, and a life that was interesting and important. She really was an important woman, and I think she deserves all of the credit and respect and honour that she receives. So going down to my 4-star read of the month, which was Claire Keegan's new short story, So Late in the Day. This is basically about a man reflecting on the woman that he could have been with had he been a better man, really. You're in Ireland, you're in the headspace of a certain type of man, maybe a bit of a traditionalist, maybe a bit of a sexist, and so expected, you know, food on the table at a certain time and a tidy house and not much more beyond that other than, you know, sex, really. The short story is him reflecting on potentially how he could have treated his future wife better, who you know, walked out on him because of the way that he acted towards her. And so the whole thing was sad, but didn't ultimately, and obviously it was Claire Keegan's writing, and so you know that it's deceptively simple whilst being packed with layers of nuance and subliminal context there, but ultimately wasn't a wow, hence why it's 4 rather than 5 stars for me. So I want to quickly talk about my DNFs as well for the month. The Season of Migration to the North has been on my TBR for years, and I DNF'd this because of the writing style. I really wasn't getting on with the narrative or the protagonist, really. And the writing just felt slightly dry for me, and it's the same reason why I DNF'd Engleby, which is a relatively new addition to my TBR, and it was also because of the Dark Academia video that I have plans to release this month. Again, it was the character in this. This is a serial killer, kind of psychopath, and it's an unreliable narrator. The way he was speaking and the language itself was just so dry, and I know Sebastian Faulks is meant to be a great author, but I just could not read that book for any length of time. I was reading it and kind of wanting to skim it and also put it down at the same time. It was really distasteful writing to me. I just really did not like that writing style at all, and it's actually going to make me think twice about picking up another Sebastian Faulks book because it was just that bad. I also DNF'd The Trap and The Phantom of the Opera, both of which I got very far through the book. So The Phantom of the Opera, I got through about 80% of the book before DNFing because I was enjoying it up to a point. I enjoyed the mystery aspect and the drama of being at the theatre, but in that last kind of 30% that I read, so from the 50% mark onwards, it just felt really tedious that this had been dragged out for too long and that we needed a resolution to what had happened far sooner than it actually was going to materialise. Then the Persian got dropped into the narrative, and it wasn't really making a whole lot of sense, and they're kind of just running around the basement of the theatre kind of trying to find somebody, but they were doing it for kind of 10-20% of the book. The whole thing was becoming ridiculous, and if a book is doing that, that's kind of a fatal flaw for me, that if I can't take you seriously in terms of this is meant to be a brilliant classic book, and if I can't take that seriously and just feel like, you know, you could chop out a big chunk of that to kind of reduce down the fannying about sort of thing and get on with it, then I think it would have been a better book, and I would have been able to finish it because there was less of the running around like the 2 headless chickens in the basement of a theatre, which just went beyond the absurd for me and just was not enjoyable at all. And then the second was Catherine Ryan Howard's The Trap. This is a thriller, and I do like Catherine Ryan Howard's writing and her books, but this has given her a 50% hit rate for me. So I gave The Nothing Man and 56 Days both 5 stars, and then I DNF'd Runtime and The Trap. So 2 books 5 stars, 2 books D and F. This really puts her on my radar as an author that I either love or hate, and that is interesting but also dangerous at the same time, because it means I'm excited to pick up her next book but also know that it could be a massive fail like this one. So this one I explained the summary of the blurb of to you in my October TBR video, but this one I basically didn't like because of the story itself. So this woman is out to try and get into the back of cabs with the hope of tracking down a house full of women who have been kidnapped, and they know that they are still alive because they've received one woman back. So one woman has escaped and has said there are other women in that house that were being trapped with me, and just the whole premise of it from then on just kind of fell off a cliff for me because it felt too voyeuristic and too trauma porn type of thing, where it needed to stay more in fiction than it was. So this has happened. There are news stories about this, especially there are some really famous crime documentaries from America where this exact same thing happens, where one woman runs out of a house, says there are more women that are trapped in that house where I was staying. So and it wasn't particularly, so it was that along with not massively interesting characters and writing that made me want to put this down, because I wasn't invested in the characters, I wasn't massively interested in reading the story, and also the writing wasn't giving me much to go off either. So it was kind of like a flop on all 3 counts. So as you can see, when I was travelling around, I was very much DNFing left, right and centre in those final 2 weeks of September, but my page count for the month is very, very high. It's higher than I think August and potentially July as well, just because of the size of the books that I was reading. I was in the first half of September, I was easily sitting down and reading 100, 150 pages of the Catherine Parr book or the Likeness book, and just had a wonderful time, because in that early September time in England we had a beautiful sunny period of time where I would just sit out in the garden and read for hours with my mum. So it was really, really special and wonderful. So yes, there will be 2 more videos coming for you in October, as I say, the October wrap up and also the personalised recommendations for you guys. So make sure to remember to leave me those requests in the comments down below and I will make a video about them. And also thank you again for bearing with me during this travel time. I hope you're having a lovely week and reading good things, and I will talk to you very soon in my next video, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.